So how long does it take to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript? So how long does it take to become a web programmer? There is no shortcut, but there are many ways to get lost and to waste a lot of time. So how long does it take to learn HTML? Let's say you're serious about it and it takes you 1 week. 1 week is realistic because you just have to learn the main HTML tags and to learn what they mean. 1 week is what it took me. CSS may take years, but the minimum amount of CSS you need, you can learn in, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, because nowadays you not only need to learn the main CSS classes, you also need to learn Flexbox, but it's not mandatory to know all of these specifics of CSS at first. So the basics will take 2 weeks. Then you will need to learn JavaScript, and JavaScript will take you realistically between 3 weeks up to 3 months to be able to do what you want, to have a dynamic website. But then, just as with CSS, it can take 2, 3, or 5 years to really master it. But I guess your aim is to know enough HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to land your first job. And then you need to learn a framework. Nowadays, it's mandatory. I showed this video in 2021. So you'll need to learn either React or Angular or Vue or any other framework. But nowadays, it's really React, Angular, and Vue which are the main frameworks that are mostly in demand. And learning a framework like React, it takes only 2-3 weeks. Angular is the most difficult one. It takes, to really be comfortable with it, at least 2 months, because you have to learn a TypeScript, RxJS, on top of creating components, making them communicate from parent to child, from child to parent, between siblings, etc. And Vue, it takes, I would say, the same amount of time as it takes to learn React. Learning to consume REST APIs is also something that you should really master. Being a front-end developer means that you create the UIs, that you can create forms, and that you know how to handle form submission, and that you can route to different pages and create dynamic routes, etc. But in 99% of the projects you will have to do at work, you will need to consume an API. So let's say you will need to really understand what's going on between the client and the server, and then doing fetch requests and so on. It will take, let's say, another week really to re-understand all the verbs like put, post, delete, etc. Being able to communicate with the REST API. So it's realistic to consider that it would take something around 1,000 hours. So it's 10 times less than the famous 20,000 hours rule that is usually mentioned when people want to know how long does it take to go from absolute beginner to a master. But the aim is not to become a master, because you need to learn enough HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to land your first job, and the first, second, and third job will allow you to grow as programmers. You don't have to spend 5,000 or 10,000 hours to become employable, to become good enough to land your first job. But you will need, and it's realistic to say, between 1,000 and 1,500 hours to be ready. So now it's up to you to decide how long you'll be able to work and practice on a daily basis. And please, sleep enough, because sleeping is what allows you to memorize and to understand best the next day. And try to have at least 1 day a week during which you won't think of studying. You will just go out for a walk, or just allow the pressure to go down. And even if that day you decide to study 2 hours in the evening, but at least for 1 day, just relax, spend time with your friends or family, watch Netflix, do whatever you do, but relax at least 1 day a week. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that it's extremely easy to waste time. And here are the best ways to waste time. And why I mention them? Because I don't want you to fall into this trap. First is to spend hours and hours a week trying to figure out what is the best framework. The short answer is there are no best framework. People who know and love React will say React, people who know and love Angular will say Angular, etc. You get the point. So don't waste time. And I can tell you that I spent sometimes almost an hour a day reading articles on Medium or on blogs. And now that I know Angular, React, and Vue, I can tell you that 99% of blog posts comparing frameworks and libraries are just too biased. Usually people just know one framework, then they played with another one, and of course the conclusion is, yeah, the framework I know best is also the best. Don't waste time. The best way to choose the framework to study is, as I explained in this video, is to study your local market. It doesn't matter what is the best framework. The best framework for you is the one that will allow you to pay your bills. That is the best framework. And if you want to become a professional programmer, that's what matters. You need to learn to code in order to get paid doing it. Second, when you learn a framework or a library, then it will be, I wouldn't say easy, but it will be easier to learn a second one and then a third one because you will have the knowledge that comes from your first framework or library, namely how to create components, how to make them communicate, how to create routes, how to handle state, etc. All this knowledge that you will learn with your first framework, you will be able to use it in the other framework. So that's why you don't need to waste time. So don't waste time, don't spend hours every week reading articles, comparing frameworks. It's a total waste of time. The other best way to waste time is to not create projects. You need to create side projects as soon as possible because programming is a skill. And this video develops this concept of learning to program is really learning to master a new skill. And the last way to waste a lot of time is to not be consistent. So when you decide to learn programming, please don't practice just 12 hours on Saturdays, for example, and then not practicing till next Wednesday or Friday or Saturday. It's much better, it's much more efficient to practice 2 hours a day than 12 hours, let's say once or twice a week. It's better to study 2 hours a day and then, let's say once a week, 4 or 6 hours a day. Now that you know how long it takes, namely to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript plus a framework, something between 1,000 and 1,500 hours, divided per the number of hours you're ready to devote to programming, and you have your answer. If you already learned to program and want to share in the comments how long it took you to learn to program, please leave a comment. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, and I see you soon.